up, beautiful people? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Erin, and this is Erin on Demand, where we are all about owning our business, owning our lives, and owning our happiness. And today, we are talking about podcasts. I love podcasts, and I've loved podcasts for a pretty long time. They are part of my regular listening stuff, whether that's me riding in the car or while I'm doing certain more mundane tasks at home. I will pop on a podcast just because I like to feel like I'm getting information. It's not always pertaining to entrepreneurship. I think that it's important to have a variety of things that you are listening to based on your interests, things that are just fun to listen to, that feel like a relief. So many people kind of get caught up in this, I have to always be listening to a podcast that's giving me all this information and value, which is good, but value can also be laughing. Value can also be relatability. It doesn't always have to be hardcore information. So I am going to share with you guys some of my favorite podcasts and some podcasts that I'm just now starting to listen to, but I think that my audience will really enjoy. Let's get into it. And these are not in any particular order. This is just from my library, some of the podcasts that I have been really listening to lately. So here we go. All right, so the first one is Blessed and Bossed Up. The host name is Tatum. She is just a boss, and she is a blessing to my life. My friend Sierra actually put me on to her podcast because she was like, E, some of my friends call me E, girl, I just really think that you would relate to this. It's about faith and business and kind of how those two things tie into each other. And I'm a very strong believer, a very strong person in faith, and just to kind of hear those two worlds collide, just how to use your faith in your business and in your practices, it's really, really good. The host is amazing. She's very strong-willed, but also just relatable. Like, she's just a down chick. She's down for her business. She's down for God, and I just love it. So, Blessed and Bossed Up. The second podcast is called How I Built This, and it's a very popular podcast. It's an NPR podcast all about how big entrepreneurs built their businesses. So the host interviews people like the founder of Rent the Runway, the founders of Instagram, the founder of Vice. Like, they pick the brains and tell the stories of these major entrepreneurs. And so it's just really good insight. It's a really great podcast that kind of tells the story behind a lot of the businesses and just gives you that personal connection to these big entrepreneurs. And they really kind of put things into perspective on what it takes to build a really, really big sustainable business. Phenomenal, okay? The third podcast is the My Taught You podcast, or Myleik Teal's podcast. Myleik Teal is the founder of Curlbox. I'm not subscribed to her business, but I follow her very avidly on social media and just through her podcast. And she is phenomenal. Like, if you don't follow her on social media and you are a young woman, especially a young woman of color, I would highly recommend you follow Myleik, because she is always dropping the gems, y'all. She is always dropping really good content, really encouraging messages, and just really honest and truthful messages that might hit you in your core. And you'll be like, dang, like, she just helps you snap back into shape and get your life back in order. So Myleik Teal's podcast is very much, it is business focused, but it's also like personal development focused. Like, you can't have a successful business if you don't have your ducks in a row personally. So that's kind of the tone of the My Taught You podcast. Okay, number 4 is the Secret to Success podcast, which is Eric Thomas's podcast. And many of you may be very familiar with Eric Thomas. He is a huge motivational speaker. He's from Detroit/Lansing area, and he's just a massive motivational speaker. He has a podcast, and it gives a lot of good insight. I will say that they do talk about sports a lot and use kind of sports as an analogy to real world, which, if you aren't into sports, then okay. It's not a sport podcast, but they do often talk about sports. And I don't know, I like this podcast. It kind of has taken more of a self-loathing tone to it because Eric Thomas has gotten really big, but he does drop a lot of good gems, a lot of good knowledge. And if you haven't listened to his podcast, I honestly recommend going further back into his podcast, like closer to when he first started as opposed to them now. I think I connected a lot more with his podcast back when he first started, but it's still a very good podcast. It's pretty entertaining, and I think you will get a lot of value out of it. Number 5, Transformation Church. The pastor is Michael Todd, or Mike Todd, and he is so dope. Like the way that he shapes his messages, it is a Christian podcast. The way that he breaks down his content and shapes his messages is really good. So the podcast is just the audio of his sermons. So you can watch his sermons on YouTube. You don't have to listen to the podcast. But if you aren't able to watch his sermons, which is my preferred way of consuming his content, I would prefer to watch the videos because he's very animated. He uses a lot of graphics. He uses a lot of examples. And so if you aren't able to watch his sermons, I would recommend listening to the podcast version of them. Okay, number 6 is the Model Health Show, hosted by Sean, but I can't think of his last name. But anyways, it's all about health and wellness and just health from all different angles. He talks a lot about nutrition, exercise, and a lot of very scientific things that we may not know of, or vitamins and minerals that we need in our diet. And he really goes very in depth about just health and wellness, and he's super knowledgeable. So the Model Health Show is all about health and wellness. Okay, so these are a few podcasts that I have listened to. They aren't necessarily in my regular rotation, but I think that you guys would probably really like them. So here they are. Brown Ambition. This is hosted by the Budgetnista. Her name is Tiffany, and it's hosted by another young woman. I don't know her name. I'm not even gonna hold y'all up. Brown Ambition. Mandy. Okay, her name is Mandy. This podcast is all about finances. If you need to get your money right, Tiffany breaks down a lot of stuff, from investing to budgeting to loans to debt to everything. Like they literally tackle a lot of different topics. So she is super knowledgeable. And if you don't follow her on social media, I also recommend you follow the Budgetnista on social media as well. Another one I recently started listening to is the Courtney Sanders Show. It's good. I like it. So far, I haven't listened to it very much, but it is something that I think you guys would enjoy. It's centered on entrepreneurship, being a woman in entrepreneurship. So it's kind of along that line of content. A couple others, Getting Grown. That is one of, it's very entertaining. It's just about growing up and experiencing the transitions of growing into adulthood. The hosts are very funny. It's more entertaining, but it also brings value. So you will find yourself laughing, but you will also find yourself thinking and reflecting. The Casey Crew. Now, I'm going to just let y'all know, this is about relationships. It is a little on the raunchy side, but they do tackle a lot of really good topics in the space of relationships and advice. It's hosted by DJ Envy and his wife, Gia Casey, who DJ Envy is the DJ on The Breakfast Club. I think that's about all. I tried listening to Oprah's Super Soul Conversations. I do like it, but it's one of those podcasts where I have to pick and choose which episodes I listen to. Like, I can't just listen to it all the time. If I see a guest on her show that I really like, then I'll listen to it, but it's a little too deep for me. That is all, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I was about to say podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to leave me a comment about your podcast. What are you listening to? Do you have a podcast? If so, drop the link below because your girl might check you out, okay? I always shift whatever podcast I'm listening to in the moment. Sometimes I get really into one or two and kind of fall back on the others. So these are kind of the top ones that I've been listening to right now or for a while. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope you guys check out some of these podcasts. I will leave the links to them below. And until next time, I will talk to you later. Bye.